and the other one is a new one today. This deals a lot with election integrity in ballot boxes. So I'd like to address the ballot boxes first, and I think I'll stop talking at some point, and then I'd like to come back and maybe talk about the second topic as a separate issue. So just to get started on the ballot boxes, first of all, I have seen 2,000 mules. Okay, so let's start with that. Donna, you called me a while back and said I'm a little disappointed in you, Jim, that you don't stand for election integrity. Let me just say that is patently false. I am a champion for election integrity, and I take this issue very seriously. And by the way, I didn't start this last month. I started this about 9 years ago. So this is not a new topic for me. Some of you may know I've talked about this a lot. I've worked the elections as a supervising judge before I was an elected official. I learned a lot about elections and I learned how things work. And back in the day, Elizabeth Clarkson, who was a statistician from WSU, actually addressed some anomalies in our data, and she was very concerned, and she actually sued Sedgwick County. I was on her side. I supported her in her efforts to fix some anomalies in our election data. As a county commissioner, we've done a couple of things. Number one, we actually went to the state of Kansas, helped to draft a law, and testified in favor of that law. Me personally went to Topeka numerous times, and we passed an election audit law. And I will take a little bit of credit for that because I think Sedgwick County led on that issue. And me personally, I led on the issue. So to someone to argue that I don't care about election integrity doesn't really know my history. Second thing we did was, as a county, we opened up, we recognized the equipment that we had prior to 2016 was not able to be audited. The courts ruled that you were not able to audit that because it would potentially reveal the identity of a particular voter. If someone was observing the poll site, they could see a date and time on a particular machine, a machine number, and they could take that information back and they could figure out who voted how. So that was the result, and consequently, they ruled that you could not audit those machines. We opened this up to the public, and we had I don't know how many different vendors for election equipment, but the public themselves, including Beth Clarkson, came and helped us pick out our equipment for replacement. This equipment, every single ballot is a paper ballot, first of all. Every single paper ballot is retained for auditing purposes. The public put their hands on this equipment. They did a mock election, and they, for numerous opportunities, eventually picked the equipment that we ended up purchasing. And we spent $7 million of property tax dollars in Sedgwick County to buy that equipment that was actually designed to be audited. So when I hear people like Mike Lindell and Seth Keschel and Dr. Franks point the finger at Kansas, and especially Sedgwick County, and say we have election fraud in Sedgwick County, you've got my attention. And I'd like to find out exactly what it is they're talking about. Let me tell you, they look at old voter data. By the way, they've made comments that in every single state, every single county of every single state, every single precinct has widespread voter fraud. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. And it's not really data-based, it's simply an opinion, is the way I see this. But when they actually single out Sedgwick County, I begin to wonder, what do they know about Sedgwick County? And I dug into this, and at the end of the day, their data is based on what they think the results should have been. And they calculate what they think the error is. That's not smart. And I appreciate their desire to have integrity, and I do too. And by the way, my focus has been on Kansas. What happens in Pennsylvania and Arizona and other states, the electors of those states need to hold their legislators and their secretaries of state accountable to have the best laws. I know the Heritage Foundation of Election Integrity gave Kansas a bad grade. You know, the very best of all the states, the state that had the best grade was Georgia. Georgia is one of the states that's in 2,000 mules. You see people dumping what appears to be lots of ballots in the ballot boxes. And yet they have the best grade in the country, and we have one of the worst grades in the country. I'll argue that I don't think Georgia is better than Kansas. I think Kansas is actually one of the best in the country, if not the best, with our election laws, and they can get better. And I am continuing to work with the legislature to advocate for even better laws. The legislature this last year, as someone mentioned earlier, they looked at whether the election should end at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, and they could not agree. They also looked at ballot boxes. I'm not sure right now if that law passed or did not pass, but they were talking about one ballot box for every 30,000 people. Do the math. We have 526,000 people in Sedgwick County. We could have 19 ballot boxes by that law. We don't have 19. We have 14. By the way, the county commissioner was not asked whether we wanted ballot boxes. The money did not come from CTCL. The money came from the Help America Vote Act grant, which is taxpayer funds from the federal government to the state and then given to the counties for the purposes of trying to find ways for people to vote during a pandemic. So the ballot boxes were purchased through taxpayer funds. You're right, the county did accept $816,000 from CTCL, which, by the way, I forced to vote and I voted no. That aside, that money did not buy ballot boxes. I don't personally think we need ballot boxes. We never had them before. We don't really need them now. But they are taxpayer funded and they are in place. So the question is, do they create fraud? And I want to just be very clear. If they did, I would be the first in line to say, let's get rid of them. By the way, we don't have that authority. I've asked our legal, can we get rid of these ballot boxes? We didn't buy them. We didn't place them. We didn't have anything to do with putting them in. So you guys are asking us to vote no to get rid of ballot boxes. You actually are, I hate to say this, but we're not the ones that put them there.
Who did?
Please, you can't,
Sorry.
pardon me?
I just said who did then?
I'll explain that. So again, the HAVA grant went to the various counties. And the counties, the election commissioners, we have, well, it's most 101 counties, the elected county clerk runs the elections. In 4 counties, including Sedgwick County, the election commissioner is appointed by the Secretary of State. Our election commissioner made a choice to spend that money to buy 14 ballot boxes. We have 20 cities in Sedgwick County. And so she placed them around the county, and she did that on her own. And by the way, she's no longer with Sedgwick County. Angela Cadillo is now our election commissioner. So this actually precedes Angela, and the commissioners were not asked. I did ask legal, can we remove these boxes? The answer is no. It's not our business. So at the end of the day, if you don't like ballot boxes, I agree. But you know what? This is a legislative issue, or it's a Secretary of State issue. But I'm going to go back to my first point a minute ago. Do we actually think there's actual fraud? And again, let me argue a couple things. I may be off on my numbers a little bit. We had about 88,000 mail ballots returned to the election office in the 2020 general election. Of those, less than 10% came through ballot boxes. The majority of those ballots were returned through the postal system. The ballot boxes are, I think it's at least once a day, but I think in some cases it's twice a day. They actually send Republicans and Democrats in teams to those boxes. There is a set of keys. They have to open the box. They have to get the ballots out. They have to count the ballots, and they have to agree on how many ballots we just picked up. Put them in a secure container and lock it up. It's a sealed container. If they have to stop to use the bathroom, for example, the person that leaves the vehicle must take the keys with them. They can't leave the keys with a single person with the ballots. It's part of our protocol. So at the end of the day, there are policies in place to protect those ballots while they're being picked up and delivered to the election office. Go look at the ballot box in front of the county here. The slot is this wide. It's able to receive 1 or maybe 2 envelopes. So what you see another 2,000 mules, people, wheelbarrowing ballots in and shoving them in by the boxful. That doesn't happen here because our ballot boxes are designed to receive 1 or 2 envelopes at the most. Go to the post office. How big is the slot on the post office box? It's this big. Put packages in it. And those mail ballots, the majority of them delivered by the post office, are mixed up with all kinds of other mail. And the person who picks up those ballots is probably a partisan, and they're by themselves, and there's no accountability. They don't count the ballots, they don't log them in, and they don't take them straight to the election office. They get processed through the postal system. In many places in Kansas, those ballots actually leave the state and go to Denver or Missouri before they get delivered to their respective county election offices. So between the postal system and the drop boxes, I'll argue the drop boxes are actually better. I see someone going like, no, are you listening? Listen to me. The postal system has no accountability. Our drop boxes are open from 8 to 5 p.m. They are monitored with cameras. And those cameras, if they find an anomaly, if someone vandalizes the box or does something that's an anomaly, they will be able to investigate and find out to the best of their ability to find out who did what. but they're not monitored by human beings. By the way, the legislature did contemplate having bipartisan teams monitor ballot boxes, but it was extremely expensive. I like small government, frankly. I do want security. Let's talk about the ballots themselves. 2,000 mules makes an assumption you're printing ballots in your basement, and there's no accountability, and you're just shoving these things in the ballot boxes, and they are counted. That is the furthest thing from the truth. You have to request a mail ballot. And Angela, I see you in the back of the room. Can you please hand me a mail ballot application, please?
Sure.
To get a mail ballot in Kansas, you actually have to fill out one of these cards and send it in. You can do it online, but it does require personal identifiable information. The election office cross-references with the Department of Revenue. And so if you don't have, thank you, if you don't have a Kansas driver's license or a state ID card or provide the last four of your social and a signature, you're not going to get a ballot. So you have to request a ballot on a card, and it is scrutinized, and they cross-reference your personal information with the Department of Revenue. So if you fill it out correctly and the signature matches their signature on record, and you provide the correct information, you can get one ballot. That ballot, when you fill it out and return it to the election office, it has to be returned in the proper envelope that they give you. If you put it in a regular envelope and send it in, we will not accept that ballot. It must be returned in the envelope that we provided to you to return it in, and that envelope is pre-printed with your name and your address, and I think your voter ID, and there's also a barcode. Thank you.
These are secured, so I will need to collect these.
I will get them back to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I asked her to bring this over. We can take a look at this. This is to return the ballot in. So this is very specific. It's multicolored. There's security features built into this. If you wanted to return the envelope and a ballot box, you'd have to have one of these, and it has to have your name pre-printed on it. But the very first thing the election office does when they get the ballot is, did we send you a ballot? If we didn't send you a ballot and you're returning a ballot, we'll not accept it. In fact, I would actually trigger an investigation because that can't happen and never has happened. So at the end of the day, if you want to return a ballot through a drop box or through the postal system, you've got to go through this scrutiny. They verify the signature. It's got to be on the proper envelope with the proper information pre-printed on the envelope. So again, the idea that you're printing ballots in your basement and you're dumping in ballot boxes at 1 o'clock in the morning, how many ways can I say that does not happen? I am a champion for election integrity and security. Believe me, I am, no offense to anybody in this room, I've been doing this for a very long time. And if this was a source of major fraud, or really I say any fraud, I would be all over it. Now, I do think there's things we can do to make this better. Let me state once again, I don't like ballot boxes. We don't need them, but taxpayers paid for them. If there's fraud through ballot boxes, we should get rid of them. I've asked Mike Brown, I've asked Chris Kobach, I've asked Scott Schwab, I've asked people who are on your side. Again, you say your side. I think we're together on so many things, okay? I don't think we're on opposite sides, but I want you to have the proper information and understand what you're talking about, rather than being led down a path and you believe that the elections are being stolen by things that you see on 2,000 Mules. That's not what happens in Kansas. At the end of the day, I've asked them, is there any evidence, actual evidence of voter fraud through ballot boxes? And not one person has ever given me a single piece of evidence of voter fraud in Kansas through ballot boxes. Let me say again, I don't think we need them. I don't like them. I don't want them. We didn't place them. But you're asking us to get rid of them, which we have no authority to do. I want you to know, someone who finished, one of the final comments was, please vote because your vote really matters. I agree. The people who are saying that there's such widespread fraud, you're telling people don't vote because your vote doesn't matter. I want people to vote. Desperately want people to vote. And if people think their vote doesn't matter, they may not show up. My message to them is we have great laws and we have great processes and we have checks and balances throughout the entire system. And ballot boxes, as much as they're the focus of so much attention right now, the bigger problem is the postal system. Because there's so many things in place to even make the ballot boxes way more secure than the postal system. I sent out a card for an unrelated issue a while back, and I was getting a return to sender because it was undeliverable. I'm still getting those postcards months after I sent them out. And the election office will tell you, sometimes they get ballots from the postal system. We don't know where they were, but they were returned to the election office way after the election because they were never delivered. Let me say one thing that's most important to everybody should hear this. Your ballot is your responsibility to get it to the election office. It's not the postal system's responsibility. It's your responsibility. and they should be delivered on time for your vote to count. We get a lot of ballots that get delivered after the cutoff, which is a big discussion now. And my opinion is that's not the government's problem. That's the elector's problem. Your job is to get your ballot to the election office on time. And you need to make sure you pick a process that you trust. And by the way, you can also go online and verify they received your ballot and that your ballot was counted. That's public information. And there's so many more things I would like to say. I've got about a 90-page PowerPoint. If you admit, the gentleman from my district, I've got a 90-page PowerPoint. Number one issue is election integrity. Please let me come and present that to your group. I will give you so much more information than what's been presented here today. And by the way, you all raised a lot of great questions. I'm out of time. I've talked way too long. I could talk for hours on this topic. But I want you to understand, ballot boxes are not the source of the fraud that you're worried about. I don't like them. We don't need them. But that's not, please stay focused. The issue is, there's a lot of other issues. But Kansas, and especially Sedgwick County, we're doing it right. Now, I want people to know their vote does count, and it does matter. Please vote. And we do have accurate elections in Sedgwick County. By the way, that audit bill, we audit the elections. We do a pre-audit. We do a post-audit. If there's a single error on that post-audit, we have to expand the audit broader. And if a second error happens, it's the full count of the entire county. So we have a very high standard for accuracy in Sedgwick County. I'll tell you what I think the biggest problem is right now. Mail ballots are, people can't follow instructions. And there's lots of ballots thrown out because they forget to sign their name. They put two ballots in the same envelope. We can't count that if that happens, and on it goes. We have to come to canvassing. By the way, it's public inspection. We do canvassing in public. It takes hours. The public generally doesn't seem to care about this too much. We throw out a lot of ballots because of all kinds of things that are wrong. People aren't registered, but they vote anyway, and on it goes. They vote provisional, and we have to deal with those provisional ballots. Signatures don't match, whatever. End of the day, we care deeply about integrity. And by the way, one more thing was said. Those 14 ballot boxes, those locations were selected by the election commissioner, not Commissioner Cruz. Okay? I'll defend her in this case for sure, because no commissioners had a conversation with where to place these ballot boxes. So the fact that there's 6 in one district doesn't really matter. I have a very urban district. Some of the commissioners have more rural districts, and they put these things in places where it made sense to the election commissioner. But it was not something we had some control over. I could talk a long time. I've already talked a long time. I'm going to stop myself. If you have questions about election integrity, listen, please email me. Give me your name and your phone number and your address. I will reach out to you. I promise you I will. And I'll have a much more extensive discussion. I'll show you my PowerPoint, and I'll come present it to your group. I love election integrity. Donna Lippold, I love it. I'm a champion of election integrity. But let's not be misguided. Just don't believe someone else's narrative. Please be data-driven. I am data-driven. I really am. And I want you to know I care more about this than anybody else that I know. And this is a huge issue for me. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask if there's anything Angela Cadillo would like to say that I've not addressed. She may have heard something that she wants to address. Would it be okay for her to speak at this time?
One thing that was mentioned during public comment that wasn't addressed by you, and maybe Angela wants to address it, are keys. I heard that we can use luggage keys to open up those ballot boxes, so I want to make sure that we address that those are very secure keys.
Thank you. Angela Cadillo, your Sedgwick County Election Commissioner. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman, those keys are not luggage keys. They are specifically keyed for each box. You can't actually take keys from one box to another box, which our staff who checks the boxes will tell you, because if they grab the wrong set of keys, then they have to get the correct one before they can open it. It's 2 keys at the same time required to open the box, and we do send people out in teams of 2. They cannot be the same party in order to do those collections. So I have received several emails, and the emails are kind of a copy and paste email, but I will just give kind of a response to some of the questions that I've had on that, if you feel that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman. Okay. So Sedgwick County does have 24-hour secure ballot drop boxes. They are opened on the day that we send out ballots, and they are closed simultaneously at 7 p.m. on Election Day. We send out teams of bipartisan teams to each box, and they are waiting there, and at 7 p.m. they lock the flap closed. so that no more ballots can be deposited. During the time that they are in operation, we have security cameras up that take video of anything that's happening, and we can look at that video if we suspect a problem, if there's vandalism, we can get a hold of that video and check and see if anything happened. Those those 14 drop boxes were located across the community by the previous election commissioner. The intention was to try and find as many public buildings as possible that already had video surveillance, and those that did not, they added video surveillance for. In order to receive an advance by mail ballot in Kansas, by the way, which is the law, anyone can receive that. Who's a registered voter, it's called no excuse voting, so it's no excuse mail ballot. That is a state law. In order to receive that ballot, you have to fill out an application. That's the application I gave you. On that application, you need to include your Kansas driver's license number or your Kansas ID number. If you do not have that ID number, which, by the way, allows us to match you in the system, if you do not have that ID number, then you must enclose a photocopy of your government-issued valid photo ID. After that, we take that application, we look through it, we verify it, we make sure it's accurate and see that you are available or eligible to receive a ballot. We check the signature and match your signature to your signatures on file. If everything checks out and you're eligible to receive a ballot, we will send that ballot in the mail. That ballot, as you mentioned, does have to come back in a specific envelope. Someone had asked about the signature, the statement saying if you're dropping off someone else's ballot and thought that would be cumbersome. We made it easy. It's an affidavit right on the envelope itself. So that person has to sign it. They are not allowed by law to do more than 10. So that's why the signature is there. The voter has to sign the envelope. When we get these back, the first thing we do, as you said, Commissioner Howell, is we check to see that you requested a ballot. If you didn't request a ballot, we stop there. That would be a cause for investigation. Once we see that you've requested a ballot, the next thing we do is we check and make sure everything is filled out properly. If it is not filled out properly, we stop. We cannot process it. So sometimes, and you will see this in canvassing, you will see envelopes that have been signed incorrectly. Two people living in the same household may sign different envelopes. We can't process those. We have to wait. We send a letter to the voters asking them to come in, or we send a copy where they can re-sign so we can check those signatures. The bottom line is, if the signature on the envelope doesn't match the signature on your file, we stop and we cannot process it. In order to make sure that nobody votes twice, once this comes in and it has been verified, we process it, and then it goes to a board that opens it at the appropriate time. This prevents someone from voting by mail and then voting advance in person. So there are plenty of security features in place in order to get an advance by mail ballot. And then I would just say that with drop boxes, we do have pickups every day. As I mentioned, we do send bipartisan teams. They are required to sign chain of custody logs, which is not something we can get the post office to do. The post office does not sign a chain of custody log every time they take a ballot out of a post office box. And so we have very strict procedures in place in order to make sure that those ballots that are collected are the same ones that arrive, are the same ones that get processed. Is that helpful?
Yes. Angela, might want to let the public know that vote canvass is when the actual election is certified by the 5 people that you see sitting before you. Although, since this is an election, it's got several of their names on the ballot. Most of the time we recuse ourselves and find an alternate, so I don't know who the 5 people are today. Will be sitting on the vote canvass, but that's going to be held on August the 11th at 9 a.m. One of the things I might want to suggest to you is that at times when there is a question that might have a lot of public scrutiny, we move the vote canvass up to the old courtroom upstairs rather than in the small room that we normally do vote canvass. As most of our vote canvasses, We may have one or two people, sometimes a couple news, but beyond that, we do the vote canvass in a fairly small room because we don't have too much public interest in it. But this one, I think we're going to have a lot of public interest in it. We may want to look at the location. That's up to you. You set that up, and we just attend. So, but I do want everyone to know that that is the day that we certify it. Now, let me talk a little bit about the vote canvass that I see from my point of view. The votes, when you go up in person, we don't look at any of those because those were counted. Not one single machine, and I heard some people complaining about things that are hooked to the internet, using thumb drives and so forth. Not one of our voting machines is ever hooked to the internet. They are secure. So the ones that go through the automatic machines, when you vote in person, we do a count to make sure that this is the number of people voted on that, this is the number of ballots that are in that container, and those votes automatically get counted. Now, so what happens at vote canvass? I don't know how many of you have ever attended a vote canvass, but the 5 commissioners or their substitutes will sit in a room, and Angela and her staff will come up with baskets full of votes. I'm talking baskets full with hundreds of votes in these baskets. And these are ones that the election commissioner, the election officials had a question on. They forgot to sign and all we're looking at is that envelope. I didn't take one because they're monitored on the number. But we don't open those. It's not like you saw on TV during Florida where you're looking for Chad and you're scrutinizing a ballot. We don't see the ballot. We see the outside of that envelope. And it amazes me at how many are in these boxes that we go through. She'll come up with she categorizes them for us, which is very nice. We don't have to look at every one. We look at a stack of them. And then we pass that stack around, and each one of us verifies that that's what happened on that ballot. Someone will forget to sign it. We won't count those. Soon as we take a look at that and say they didn't sign it, that whole stack goes off, and they're not counted. A husband will sign for a wife, or a wife will sign for a husband. That's not legal. She'll point that out to us. We'll verify that that's what happened. That whole stack will go off to the side. We will not count them. Now, your signature's on file. Somebody will sign your name, but it's not your signature. We verify that. She points out this stack of ballots was signed by someone, but it wasn't the person that signed it. That registered to vote. Those are thrown out. We don't count those. So I could go. Sorry. Looks like my battery is dying. I could go on because there are a whole stack of reasons why that we don't count ballots. But in some cases, we do count them when there's a question because we scrutinize them very closely. Say they said that this person didn't sign this ballot. Well, we look at 3 or 4 samples of your signature if there's really a question on it, and then we make a decision and we write on the top independently on that ballot, yes, count this, no, don't count this, and then we look in the majority rules. So I feel extremely confident. Oh, by the way, inside of that envelope, which we don't look at, those were printed. If you look at your absentee ballots, you're not going to end up counterfeiting that. And besides, if you counterfeited it and you tried to send in ballots for a bunch of dead people, we're not Chicago, remember? If you send in a bunch of ballots for people that aren't registered or that did register and they're the wrong ones, they get thrown out anyway because of all the other reasons that I've specified already. So do I believe that our ballots are absolutely accurate? Absolutely. And come and see it. Remember, August 11th, 9 a.m., see how the process works, how that we verify that they're doing their job and that we verify that every single vote that was an accurate vote was cast and we can count it, or if we think that there is anything whatsoever wrong with that ballot, we do not count it. So I am confident in our election. So I don't know if Commissioner Howell has any other comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was listening to some of the other comments, I just want to circle back. So again, maybe just point out once again that it requires personal information by the way, I talked to a nice lady the other day, and she said, I got like 4 or 5 ballots in the mail. I said, well, maybe those were ballot applications. And she said, oh, maybe you're right. Let me just explain that this is a ballot application. It's not a ballot, okay? This is also a ballot application, mail ballot application. So you might get from different groups, if you're a member of a union, they might send out a ballot application to their union members, for example, to try and get them out to vote. On it goes. I mean, people send you all kinds of ballot applications. Those are not ballots. If you fill out 10 ballot applications, you're only going to get 1 ballot, okay? But the most important thing on here is your personal information has to be on here and your signature. And they will cross-reference this with the Department of Revenue and verify that you provided correct information, or you will not get a ballot. You only get 1 ballot. And so there's that information. And then when you return the ballot, it requires, again, a signature once again of that voter. So if everything doesn't match, we're not going to accept it. So there are some security things built in place. Now, there are some legislative things we can do. We can't do it. Legislative things we can do to actually tighten this up even more. And again, if you want to have a conversation, please let me know, and I'll come and tell you some great ideas to tighten up things even further. Okay? And I would like to have some support on making things better. I'll just tell you one thing is my wife was in the legislature last year. She actually had an integrity law that would have actually been a good law, and she seemed to have really good support for it. Not one person testified in favor or against that law. So when people talk about election integrity, you need to be engaged through the legislature especially to change our laws. That bill didn't go anywhere because people didn't care about it. But it was even the Secretary of State says that's a pretty good idea. But we never went forward because no one thought this was important. So if you guys want to fix our laws, the legislature is the best place to start. But in terms of what we have access to here, there's not a lot we can do that we're not already doing. And finally, so we can't go back and forth here. I'm sorry. But also, I heard someone talk about dirty voter rolls. Let's talk about that for just a second. I just bought the entire state of Kansas election data again last week. I do it all the time. It's expensive. It's over 2 million lines, approximately 2 million lines of data, and I like to analyze that. I do a lot of analysis on that data, especially for Sedgwick County, especially for my district. I know there are some errors in that data. First of all, we cannot remove people from the voter rolls without following a very lengthy and arduous process. You can't just take people off because you don't think they should be on there. You have to go through a very long process to get someone off that roll. And if someone dies, we find their obituary, or if they move out of state and they contact their election office in their other state, contacts our election office, or the voter contacts us, they can update that roll. At the end of the day, this is a handwritten form, and someone's got to transcribe that information and type it into our database. Sometimes they misspell a name. Sometimes maybe the person gave the wrong birth date, and somehow or maybe the person typed the wrong birth date. There are things that happen. There's also some people who registered so long ago we didn't require birth dates. You look at their voter rolls, it says 1/1/1904 or 1900, and they're 123 years old. Well, we know that's not true. But the reality is when they registered 80 years ago, the birth date wasn't required. So at the end of the day, I spent a lot of time on this. I found some errors on some birth dates. But here's the point. Are people exploiting that voter roll to do mass fraud? Someone used the word fraudulent. Someone else would use the word crooked. We have bad elections in Sedgwick County. And again, the dirty voter rolls is how they do this. Let me just tell you, the voter rolls are really pretty good. I'd say they're not perfect, but I'll bet they're 99.9% accurate. And that 0.1%, let's fix it. It just is a human process, and you got to go find those errors manually. And it takes time to get them fixed. And by the way, we don't do that either. The election office does that. Secretary of State does that. And I agree, we ought to have perfect voter rolls. Perfect is probably too high of a standard. So once again, I care deeply about this topic. I'm with you I want the same thing you want. I want election integrity. But let's stay focused on where the real problems are. Legislation is our biggest opportunity. And other states like Pennsylvania and Arizona, they got a lot of work to do. All right, thank you, Chairman, for the chance to speak. And I have another topic I'd like to talk about when we're moving away from elections. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Angela, do you have anything that you need to add? Any clarification?
The only other thing that I did forget to mention that I think is of note is that every staff member in my office who will be processing ballots and advanced applications has undergone signature verification training. So we do have education on that. And that's just something that I had forgotten to mention to you earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I want to thank everyone that came to speak today. I believe in election integrity, but I believe we have it. And hopefully we've had an opportunity to help educate you on exactly what we're doing here in Sedgwick County to ensure that we have election integrity. But I truly understand your passion in this, and I appreciate you spending the time to come to speak with us today and to express your concerns about this. This is what our elected democracy government is based on. This is the foundation of how that we govern our local, state, and national areas. So I wore the uniform for 29 years to make sure that everyone has their opportunity to be American citizens and to exercise their right to vote. And thank you very much for coming. I know we spent a lot of time on this, but it's an important issue, and we needed to make sure that everyone understands this important issue. And thank goodness that KPTS and our online through Facebook and YouTube is able to get this out to the public so that they have an opportunity to hear what we have to say. Again, if you have detailed questions beyond this, our resident expert is Commissioner Howell. And I'm not trying to pass the buck. You're always welcome to send an email to any one of us and ask questions. But I'm hoping that we've answered your questions. And again, thank you for being here. I don't want to discount what anyone said whatsoever. I just wanted to make sure you understood that we believe that we are doing a great job here in Sedgwick County and that our elections are valid and that we have the integrity and we can rely on the accuracy. So we're going to move on to other subjects now. Thank you very much. You can stay and hear the rest of the meeting, but thanks for